Hello and welcome back to the Crime Reel. Today's story is shocking, not least because of the decapitation of and extensive violence directed at the elderly victims, but also the fact that almost 10 years later, those responsible for this crime are still walking free. There is so little evidence, despite a determined sheriff's extensive efforts, that leaves us with only theories and assumptions to go on. Have a listen and add your thoughts in the comments section below. What do you think happened? So today we return to May of 2014 and to the house of Russell and Shirley Dermond, a married couple originally from New Jersey who were both in their late 80s. The pair were enjoying their retirement living in the beautiful gated community of Greatwater Reynolds in Putnam County, Georgia. They had a gorgeous 4-bedroom, 3,200 square foot home in a wooded cul-de-sac overlooking Lake Oconee. They had a dock at the back of their house where they used to own a small boat for trips on the water, but had sold this a few years earlier due to their advancing ages. Having said that, the couple were in good health and enjoying their retirement years. They were members of the Oconee Community Church, enjoyed going for walks around their neighbourhood, and loved to socialise with family and friends. Over the course of their 68-year marriage, the couple had 4 children, 3 sons, Mark, Keith and Bradley, and a daughter named Leslie. They also had 9 grandchildren. Russell had a successful career. After serving in the United States Navy during World War II, he worked for many years as an executive for a clock manufacturer in New York. Then they decided to move to Atlanta, where he owned a chain of Hardee's restaurant franchises. Upon his retirement, the couple chose to move to Greatwater Reynolds for the quiet lifestyle it offered, with 24/7 security and a low crime rate. In the year 2000, the couple's eldest son, Mark, was murdered in Atlanta. On the night of his 47th birthday, he was attempting to purchase some crack cocaine when he was shot dead. The perpetrator was caught and sentenced to life in prison. Despite no longer being close to their son, who at times had stolen from his parents, this would have had a devastating effect on the couple. Our story today takes place 14 years later on Saturday the 3rd of May 2014. When the couple were due to attend a Kentucky Derby party hosted by their neighbours Huel and Peggy Wynn, they did not show up. This was unusual for the couple, but did not cause immediate concern. A couple of days later, Huel and Peggy began to think that it was strange that Russell and Shirley had not made any contact with them following their absence. They decided to check on their neighbours. On Tuesday the 6th of May, they went to the Dermond house and found that the couple's mail had not been taken in since the previous Saturday. They walked around the house to see if anything was amiss and found that a door was unlocked. Entering the house, it was as always spotlessly clean and tidy. Friday's newspaper with a partially completed crossword remained on the kitchen counter. Concerned that their neighbours may have been taken ill or had a fall, Huel and Peggy continued to walk around the house. Nothing seemed out of place until they entered the garage. There on the floor was Russell's body. He was lying in a pool of dried blood. He had been decapitated, and his head was nowhere to be found. Neither was Shirley. The police were immediately informed and arrived soon after. Russell was positively identified, and a murder investigation, together with a missing persons one, was quickly underway. The last time that anyone had seen or heard from either Russell or Shirley was on Thursday the 1st of May. 88-year-old Russell was out running errands in nearby Eatonton, which was confirmed by CCTV footage, and later that day the couple spoke to their son, Brad, on the telephone. There did not appear to be anything missing from the house, and Shirley's phone and handbag were found inside. The police were working on the assumption that she had been kidnapped. Towels had been placed around Russell's headless body in what looked like an attempt to prevent blood running under the garage door, which would potentially alert someone to the problems inside. Russell was wearing his dressing gown, t-shirt, boxers and slippers, and it was assumed that he may have been following his morning routine of having a cup of coffee and reading the papers when the killer had struck. Further examination found gunshot residue on Russell's collar, and it is believed that he was shot in the head before being decapitated. A search was underway for both Shirley and Russell's head, but even with the assistance of divers and cadaver dogs, nothing was found. The sheriff who would lead the investigation, Howard Seals, said that he did not believe that this was a random attack, and neighbours were praying that he was right. Howard was a well-respected man who had been the Putnam sheriff for over 18 years. He was determined to solve the case. The murder and level of violence sent shockwaves through the local community and beyond. Everyone was on edge and praying for a quick resolution to the crime. However, that resolution never came. The next major development would arrive 10 days later, when Shirley's body was found approximately 5 miles from her home, floating in Lake Oconee. Attempts had been made to weigh her corpse down with concrete blocks to avoid her being discovered, but as her body began to decompose, it produced gases causing it to inflate, and the concrete blocks were not heavy enough to keep the body below the surface. The autopsy concluded that Shirley had died from 2 or 3 blows to the head inflicted with a blunt instrument. Unlike Russell, she was dressed in her day clothes. It is unknown if this has any relevance. With no suspects, the police were investigating every possible avenue. The Dermonds' financial records were reviewed, but revealed nothing out of the ordinary. It was determined that the cut to remove Russell's head was clean, with the sheriff stating that it was not the skill of a surgeon, but whoever did it took time doing it. It was thought that Russell's head may have been removed in order to stop the police from being able to access the bullet and retrieve any potential evidence from it. Indeed, if Russell was shot and Shirley beaten, it is unclear where this actually happened, as the only mention of blood in the reports is of that surrounding Russell on the garage floor. The couple's background was fully investigated, right back to their time in New Jersey, but the police could not uncover anything which could have led to such violence. There was simply nothing bad in the couple's background that would ever suggest that they would meet such a violent end. From all accounts, Russell and Shirley seemed to be well-liked people, and in the words of Sheriff Howard Seals, they've been married 68 years, and we're hearing nothing but glorious accolades about these people. Decapitations are extremely rare in the US, with no more than a handful occurring each year, and are almost always personal. Nothing about the case made sense. It was determined that an electrical storm, sometime in the month before the murder, had rendered the surveillance cameras at the gated resort useless. At the time, no one noticed that the cameras weren't working, and this was only discovered after Russell and Shirley's deaths. Could this be related, or simply bad luck? Did the perpetrators arrive by car and manage to avoid being seen due to the broken security equipment? Or, as many consider is more likely, did they arrive by boat using the dock at the back of the Dermonds' house? Over the following months, investigators pursued hundreds of leads and multiple persons of interest, but these all eventually led nowhere. The sheriff worked on the theory that multiple people had been involved in the murders, particularly due to the way that Shirley's body had been disposed of. The Dermond children were interviewed extensively. They all fully cooperated with the investigation and had verifiable alibis. They are not considered to be suspects in their parents' murders. Any links to their eldest son's murder 14 years earlier were fully explored. Mark's killer was still in prison, and there was nothing to suggest that the two crimes were connected by anything more than extreme bad luck. Rumours circulated that the couple were in a witness protection program, but it was reported that this was not the case. As time passed, new leads dried up and the case went cold. Then in May 2023, it was reported that new DNA evidence had been discovered that could lead police to the killer. Additional tests were still needed, and it was unclear whether or not there was enough DNA to be of any assistance, or even if this belonged to the couple themselves. Not only does no one know who was responsible for these horrific deaths, we still have no idea as to why this crime happened. Without any conclusive answers, all we are left with are theories as to what happened that day. The case seems to be full of contradictions which rule out each theory as quickly as it comes into play. Perhaps the most obvious theory would be that of a robbery gone wrong. The couple were obviously well off, and maybe this was a completely random event, a nice house targeted for financial gain. There was no sign of forced entry, but perhaps the perpetrators had talked their way into the house. But why would an opportunist thief take the time to remove Russell's head and dispose of Shirley in a secondary location, and yet not take the time to steal the cash, jewellery, and other valuables in the house? The gruesome nature of the deaths seem overly personal for a chance encounter. This leads us to consider if this was a more professional targeted attack, where the perpetrators wanted something that the couple were unwilling or unable to give. However, this sort of attack would usually involve a much greater payday. Whilst the couple had a lovely home and excellent standard of living, they were not excessively rich to the point of ransom demands. After their deaths, their net worth was approximately $1.5 million, the majority of which came from the house that they were living in. The nature of the crime would hint at a seasoned criminal, but whilst the clinical beheading indicates someone who had done something like this before, as Seals said, people don't escalate from shoplifting to decapitation. The careless way in which Shirley was disposed of, where her body was inadequately weighted down, points to something far more amateur. With the couple's net worth, some suspicion always falls upon those who would financially benefit from the deaths, in this case their remaining children, despite them being ruled out of the inquiry by the police and the fact that they all had alibis. Some still question their involvement. However, it would seem that there is one major fact that would point away from any of them being involved: how their mother's body was found. It would seem that by tying concrete blocks to her body and disposing of her in the lake, the killer's intention was that she would never be found. If this was the case, Shirley would remain a missing person, and her assets would be frozen rather than the inheritance being distributed as per the couple's will. Others have suggested that the couple's death could have been a thrill kill or the work of a serial killer. However, there have been no links established to any previous or subsequent crimes, so this seems extremely unlikely. Maybe they were revenge killings, perhaps at the hands of a disgruntled employee or someone who had felt wronged by the couple in the past and wanted to make them disappear. The level of violence involved could demonstrate a deep anger towards the victims, but again, there's been no evidence found to support this theory, and in addition, the timing would seem strange, as the couple had been retired for over a decade. Talk of terrorism, drug cartels or mafia involvement has also been considered, particularly in light of the decapitation, but again this was ruled out by investigators on the basis that there was nothing in Russell and Shirley's past to indicate that they were anything more than a hard-working, family-focused couple. One of the stranger theories that I have read about is the murders may have been connected to the United Nubian Nation of Moors, a religious sect that had a 440-acre compound in nearby Eatonton. The leader of this cult, Dwight York, was sentenced to 135 years in prison after being found guilty of 13 counts of molesting children. The lead investigator on this case was also Howard Seals, and some have questioned if the cult members may have taken their anger out on the community that Howard is employed to protect. Again, this seems to be somewhat of a stretch, as what would there be to gain from this? And surely if they wanted revenge on Howard, they would direct that at the man himself, not some random members of his community. Ultimately, it would seem that the most likely reason behind the couple's deaths is that they were targeted by people who believed, either rightly or wrongly, that the couple had something that they wanted, and they lost their lives as a result. To this day, Russell's head has never been found. With the passing of time and such little evidence to go on, it would seem unlikely that we will ever know which theory is in fact correct. So what do you think? Are there any other theories that I haven't included here? Or what do you think happened to this elderly couple? That concludes today's case. Please click like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. And as I've already asked, please leave any comments below. Okay, it's petty crime time now. With Valentine's Day just around the corner, I would like you to meet Tig Tig, who I guess may win your heart. Tig Tig is from Canada, is 26 years young, which I am told is 120 years in human years. Criminal charges against Tig Tig include stealing chicken off people's plates, having a "I haven't been fed" face, and finally eating a whole bag of cat treats, which made Tig Tig pretty poorly. Thanks to Rowan for sharing Tig Tig with us. Next, from Sarah from Georgia in the US. One of her many pets includes Mothyu, previously known as Mothyu the caterpillar, but now is just Mothyu the moth, a giant leopard moth. Sarah has suggested I may be Mothyu's father. I can neither confirm or deny this, so it's a no comment from me. Lastly, Chad from Georgia has sent in Eva Marie. She is a frequent hijacker of the reclining chair in the house, and this bandana photo is of Eva Marie leaving the vets after just being spayed. Recliner chair hijackings are expected to resume within the week. Thanks for listening to The Crime Reel. Stay safe. Goodbye. Psst, just shy of a year after the murders, the Dermond's home was sold for $760,000, which was much less than market value. Could you buy a house where an unsolved murder like this had taken place? Goodbye.